When we talk about Jerusalem, especially the conflict surrounding it, it all comes back to this place, Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount, the Holy of Holies, and quite possibly the most contested place on earth.
The struggle between Israel and the Arab states and the Palestinian, which without it you cannot finish the negotiation, is the future political status of this 1.5 kilometers, 1 mile that we see in front of us.
This is the heart of downtown modern Jerusalem. For me and many others, this is what we call home, but at the same time, it's arguably one of the holiest and most important cities worldwide. It's a city rich with history, with diversity, with a people that come from many ethnicities and religions, and when you compound all of that, it's easy to understand why for centuries this is one of the most important cities in the world.
Right here in the city, Jesus died for our sins. Here in the city, he rose from the dead, and the Bible says he will come back one day right here to this city.
The struggle between Israel and Arab states is not the refugees, not the water, not the borders. The main problem is the future political status of this 1 mile that we see in front of us.
There was also this fear that the whole region would implode if, say, the Americans moved their embassies here.
It was a hot potato, yes, considered to be too dangerous, too risky, too explosive.
When you think about King David, the very first thing that he did says, we need to establish our capital right here in the city of Melchizedek.
We're driving into the city of Jerusalem. For me, this is the route I do every day on the way to the office. But for many people, this is the ancient city, the city of Jerusalem that's been renewed from that ancient historical place to a new and modern city. There's always excitement. There's never a day like the other in this city.
Jerusalem's history really began when King David established the city of David, Jerusalem, the capital of the United Kingdoms of Israel. King Solomon built the first temple in what is now the Old City of Jerusalem. And today the Old City is still inhabited and is made up of 4 quarters: the Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Armenian. It still houses the remains of the temple, the holiest site in Judaism, and where the Dome of the Rock sits today. Jerusalem is home to a diverse population of Jews, Christians, Muslims, and other ethnic and religious minorities. It also houses some of the holiest sites for the 3 monotheistic religions.
Now we are going to do magic, to give the full history in 3 minutes, huh?
We're going to try.
Something like this, we're going to try.
I met with Dr. Shmuel Berkovich to understand more about why this city has been so contested for millennia.
The date of 70 after Christ, the Romans destroyed this temple. 132. Adrianus Caesar came to Israel, destroyed the town absolutely. 638, the first conqueror of Israel by the Muslim. They built the Mosque Al-Aqsa. 1096, the Pope called all the Christian knights of Europe. They conquered Israel and Jerusalem. 1187, Salah ad-Din, the great Arab commander, drive out all the crusaders from here. At the middle of the 15th century, the Ottomans conquered Israel. From then up to the First World War, this was completely under Muslim control. Then Britain got the mandate on Israel. Then the Independence War, Israel took the West Jerusalem, Jordan took East Jerusalem. 1967, June, suddenly Israel, the Jews, are controlling all the most holy places.
Why is Jerusalem such an important city?
Jerusalem is the holiest place in the world for Judaism, especially in the Temple Mount. It's called the Temple Mount because in the past there were at least 3 Jewish temples. Now, for Christianity, Jerusalem is also holy, especially because of the events that happened to Jesus in the last week of his life. So this is the place where the first Christian community started and went all over the world. All the Muslims believed that God took Muhammad the Prophet from the holy place in Mecca to Jerusalem, where they built the Mosque of Al-Aqsa. From there, he got the commandment of 5 prayers a day for every Muslim and went back to Mecca.
All these events you described happened just in this tiny piece of land.
Right.
And I think that encapsulates the value and the importance of the city, that it's all in one place.
Right.
When we talk about Jerusalem, especially the conflict surrounding it, it all comes back to this place, Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount, the Holy of Holies, and quite possibly the most contested place on earth.
The struggle between Israel and the Arab states and the Palestinian, which without it you cannot finish the negotiation, is the future political status of this 1.5 kilometers, 1 mile that we see in front of us. The radical for the Palestinians said it's our place, therefore Jews are not allowed to go inside. On the other side, radical Jews said, this is our place. I want to pray here and in the coming future to build again our temple as it was in the history. Therefore, you see the clash, therefore the struggle on the status of this wonderful place still exists and influence the political situation all over the area.
The issue of Jerusalem has become so contentious that even though Jerusalem is the capital of the State of Israel, every single foreign embassy in the country has been based in Tel Aviv. That is, until 2018.
We're right here at the new U.S. Embassy in the heart of Jerusalem. It might seem obvious that the embassy would be here in Jerusalem, the capital of the State of Israel, but until May 2018, when a historic moment happened and the U.S. moved its embassy back to Jerusalem, there were no embassies in the city. That step, that moment, that day set the tone for the international discourse over the validity of Jerusalem being the capital of the State of Israel. This couldn't have happened without the support and the push from the Christian and specifically the evangelical community. A great example of that would be the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, who for decades were pushing for the embassy to be moved back to Jerusalem. Shalom, Jürgen.
Shalom, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I met with Jürgen Bühler, the president of the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, or the ICJ, to hear about how they've been an important part of the Holy City for decades.
We are standing in front of the Knesset here, and in July 1980, the Knesset passed a law which declared Jerusalem to be the undivided eternal capital of the State of Israel. It became a political issue. Within a few days, you had emergency meeting of the Arab League. They said every nation that recognizes Jerusalem as the capital, we will cut off their oil supply. And as a consequence, all the embassies left Jerusalem. During that time, not related to all those political troubles, there was a conference, the Feast of Tabernacles, first time that Christians came to celebrate the feast. And as they were celebrating the feast, they saw, well, we see the Jewish people are really desperate about all the embassies leaving. So they said, let's establish an international Christian embassy here in Jerusalem.
When was this? What year?
This was in September 1980. Until just a few years ago, when the American government decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem, we have been, in a way, the only embassy here in that city. And it became always a focal point of support and love and comfort for the Jewish people.
I'm interested in hearing, how did you, Jürgen, German descent, end up in Jerusalem doing this type of work?
Well, it's a very interesting story because my father was a soldier in World War II, fighting on the side of Germany, Hitler's army. He came into a Russian prison camp. And when he was sick, he was laying on a stretcher. He says he remembers the doctor passing by, telling him is that there is no hope for Bühler, he will die tonight. And he remembered he had this praying mother back home. He always joked at her, but he said, if you are really alive, like my mother said, and if you bring me out, I'm going to become a pastor. 2 days later, a Jewish doctor, she was in charge of all the prison camp in that region, she passed by his bed, and she was Jewish, so she knew those are the people who are killing our people like nobody else. And she stood in front of the bed of my father, and she says, you need to put him on special ratio, this man needs to survive. life. He said, I never saw this woman before, I never saw her after, but I always remember this Jewish lady saved my life. So he told us, as children, he says, we as Bühler family, we owe our lives to the Jewish people for two reasons. He says there was a Jewish Messiah which died for our sins. And secondly, without this Jewish woman in Russia, I wouldn't have been alive.
The ICJ's support for Jerusalem is only the beginning. They've made great efforts to stand and defend Israel in the international arena.
Right now, we are in the midst of a fight with the International Criminal Court that came out with a catastrophic ruling where they condemned Israel in an outrageous way. It really was anti-Semitic, and we are challenging that in a public way. And also, we are working in many parliaments around the world to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel. And it's such a tremendous privilege for me to be at the head of this organization. And I believe that's the kingdom of God.
The ICJ has been an unshakable supporter of Israel for many years.
Hey, David.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Their current senior international spokesperson, David Parsons, was even a part of the original team in Washington that worked to ensure the U.S. Embassy would find its way back to Jerusalem.
After the 1991 Gulf War, I said, I've got to get on the front lines of this battle for Israel, pursue this calling over my life. And I prayed and fasted, Lord, do you want me in Washington, Jerusalem, where? I was first led to Washington to work with a Christian lobby for Israel. And we said, let's work on an actual bill, a law with teeth that forces our government, the whole government, to say this is the right thing to do.
Because unless and until an American ambassador sits in Jerusalem, this matter will be misunderstood and misinterpreted.
There was enough support in Congress to pass this bill, but only after some changes had been made from our original draft. It really changed the bill significantly.
So what did the bill say? What was like the essence of it?
It's very simple, three steps. Recognize Jerusalem as a capital. Number two, move the ambassador there. And number three, then worry about building a building. And then finally, they added this waiver authority for the president. You just knew at the time this was going to just kick the can down the road. And lo and behold, did we know back in 1995 that would be this New York real estate tycoon, Donald J. Trump,
No one would have guessed.
Move the embassy.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Oh, say, can you see?
Today, we opened the United States Embassy in Jerusalem, Israel.
It was a real moment to realize God's still active on the stage of history.
There's no doubt that Jerusalem is an integral part of God's plan for this world. What's not given is that we, as human beings, would stand with Israel and with the plans and purposes of God to establish His new Jerusalem.
It's like the prophet Isaiah said, it's this city out of which the word of the Lord comes.
Jesus talked about returning to this city when the times are right for it. The city will be the place where the light of the risen, glorified Messiah shines out around all the world so that you don't even need the sun. When Jesus rules and reigns from this city, it's going to brighten the whole world.
Hey, I'm Mati Shoshani, and thank you for watching the TBN Israel YouTube channel. We hope this video gave you greater understanding of Israel and her people. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. We'd love to hear from you, so be sure to share what you've learned and ask your questions in comments below. And invite your friends to join the conversation.